Do it. We're on the bottom of Lamed Beis Amud Beis at the two dots there, 5-6 lines from the bottom. The Gemara says, "Berishona haya osa," that initially it was the case that a husband was able to be mafatel a get that he had sent to his wife just by going to Bezdin, and it created a huge stir, which is a big problem because maybe she wouldn't know that they were divorced. But that in fact was the case. In Itmar, the Gemara says in the times of the Amoraim, when we allowed him to do this, which we don't allow anymore, but when we allowed him to do this, how many people had to be there? Rav Nachman Amar Bifnei Beis, Rav Sheshes Amar Bifnei Gimel. Machlokes if we need 2 or 3 people. So if a husband, after he sent a get, wanted to be mavatel, he either had to go to 2 or 3 people, and each person explains their shitas. The Gemara says Rav Sheshes Amar Bifnei Gimel because Bezdin Katani. It says Bezdin in the Mishnah, and a Bezdin has 3 people. And Rav Nachman Amar Bifnei Beis because the Beitrei Nami Bezdin Karivu. Sometimes in Chazal we see that a Bezdin is referred to as only 2 dayanim. Where do we see this? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman Mino Aminallah. Where's the precedence in halacha to say that a Bezdin is 2? Ditnan. In this Mishnah is a discussion around the world of pruzbol, that Hillel was becoming aware that people didn't want to loan any money. He came up with a pruzbol to circumvent the dissolving of loans. Ditnan, the Gemara says, we have a Mishnah. Here you go. We're turning to the top of Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph as we speak. Ditnan. Mosrani lifnechem ploni uploni hadayonim. Look at the language. Ploni uploni. 2 people. Shebemakom ploni. So what do we see? Dayonim are referred to as 2 people. That's great precedence. That works out perfectly. For Rav Sheshes, how does he respond to this Marimak? Because Rav Sheshes said a Bezdin is 3. Rav Nachman says 2, and he brings a beautiful raya from Pruzbal. For Rav Sheshes, Atu Tana ki ruchla lechashev. Should we assume that the Tanaim are like merchants and they bring a bag of they have to say every last word in the Mishnah? Use your brains. A Bezdin is 3 people. He doesn't have to say everything. And then Velazil, he has to go and say everything. He doesn't have to say everything. So fine, Rav Nachman comes up with another Mari Makom that shows us that 2 is the appropriate number. Amar Rav Nachman Mino Aminallah Ditnan. The Mishnah writes, Dayanim Chosmin Lamata O Ha'edim. That the Dayanim, this is again talking about Pruzbal, the Dayanim could sign on the bottom, or the Edim. My lab, isn't it not the following? That Dayanim Dumya de Edim, Ma'edim Shnayim Af Dayanim Shnayim, another beautiful raya, that perhaps we have precedence to say that a Bezdin really is only 2 people, and that supports the Shita of Rav Nachman. Rav Sheshes, how would he respond to that? Midi Iria. That's a ridiculous argument. Hakid Isa v'Hakid Isa. When we say Dayanim, regular rules of Dayanim, 3. Why are you assuming that Ma Edim Shnaim Av Dayanim Shnaim? No, when it says Dayanim, it means 3. When it says Edim, it means 3. If so, says the Gemara, then Lama li lemisna Dayanim, Lama li lemisna Edim. Why do I have to say both of them? It must be that it's for the comparison. If you're saying it's not for the comparison, then why bring both? Says the Gemara, HaKamash Malan, Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph, a quarter of the way down, 10 lines down. HaKamash Malan, Deloshna Kasu Balashon Dayanim Echas Me Edim. The Dayanim could write it in their halachic legal jargon, and the Edim can sign. And even a regular Joe, like a guy like me, I don't know legal jargon. I just would write it. These guys want to have a pruzbol, whatever it is, and the Edim and the Edim could then sign, and the Dayanim could then sign. So therefore, each shita has its teeth that either. Again, this is all before the Takana of Rabban Gamliel that we're not allowed to do this, but Berishona, as we had said in our Mishnah on Shabbos, initially, a husband could go to Bezdin and he could shoot down the get just by going over to either 2 or 3 dayanim. Says the Gemara, why did Rabban Gamliel change things? Rabban Gamliel Zakin said, we can't do this anymore. No more husband going to Bezdin and ruining the get after the shlichus has already been sent off. We don't have cell phones. We have no way to communicate this. What was the concern? Tikkun ha'olam, to fix the world, not tikkun olam in modern parlance, which is abused and completely taken out of context. What is the tikkun olam that we're talking about at the 2 dots? My mipnei tikkun olam machlokes samoraim. Rav Yochanan Amar mipnei takonas mamzerin. He was concerned about this leading to mamzerus. We'll describe in a minute. And Reish Lakish Amar mipnei takonas agunos. He said that the concern was about agunos, creating agunos. Rav Yochanan, what was his concern about mamzerus? So says the Gemara as follows: Savar Laki Rav Nachman. He actually held like Rav Nachman to Amar Bifnei Shnayim. We're merging the two sugyas together. He held like Rav Nachman. The mamzerus concern was because there was only two edim. Ubeitre les lehu kala. When there are only two dayanim, that bezdin doesn't create a kol. Too few people. And therefore, Behilo Shema, she'll never hear that she actually wasn't divorced, that her husband canceled the get. V'lo yada, v'azlo minsaba, she's going to go and marry somebody else. V'ika mamzerim. Super practical halachic consideration is that if we have no way to guarantee that she's going to know, you're going to end up with this girl marrying somebody else. Her divorce was really invalid. She marries and has a baby. Mamzerim are born into the world. Rabbi Gamliel Azakin says it might work halachically, but we're not letting it work anymore. Chachamim are intervening. No more. Halfway down, Reish Lakish Amar, what was his concern? Mipnei takanas ha'agunos. We were concerned about creating agunos. How so? Savar Lakir of Sheshest Amar Bifnei Gimel. His concern was that, yes, word will travel because there are three dayanim, ubeit lasa islahu kala, and a bezdin of three. Everybody will hear what they paskind. Ushema v'yada'a, she'll hear. She'll know that get was invalid. And then what is she left as? An aguna. And then v'lo minsaba, she won't get married. V'takanas agunas hudeika. All we're concerned about is aguna. So machlokas in the Amoraim as to what Rabban Gamliel Hazakin was thinking when he stopped this particular halachic outlet. Again, the halachic outlet, the Havamina was that after the Baal sends the Shliach, he could go over to Bezdin and say, I hereby cancel the get that I sent. And Rabbi Gamliel Zakin says, no more. We're not allowing it anymore. The Gemara brings a brisa, Tanu Rabbanan, 2/3 of the way down. Bitlu, what if even after the takana of Rabbi Gamliel Hazakin, the husband still went to Bezdin, and the Bezdin accepted the cancellation of the get? He broke the rules, because really Rabbi Gamliel Zakin is right. So the halacha is it's a machlokas, muvutal. According to Divrei Rebbe, this is actually a cancellation of a get, and whatever dominoes fall. Either there could be a mamzer in the world, or there could be an aguna in the world, however you hold within the previous Amoraim. Rashbag Omer, no. Eino yachol lo levato v'lo lahosiv v'lo tano. Al tano. You can't change anything. She'im kain, if we were to allow this get to be mevutal against the rules, then ma koach bezdin yafeh. And what's the point of Bezdin making an institution? Why is it that they would put in a law that nobody is going to keep? So says the Gemara, Abam Kashya an Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. Let's remember, Mida Oraisa, it works for a husband to be mevatel get. It's my children, sorry. Mida Rabbanon, Mida Oraisa, a husband is allowed to be mevatel a get. So the problem is Rabban Gamliel Azakin is a rabbi. He's not a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So how can he say it doesn't work anymore? If the din de oraisa mechanically works, how does Rabban Gamliel intercede and intervene on that to say that it doesn't work? Asks the Gemara 2/3, 3/4 of the way down, a powerful question. Is there such a scenario? Dimi de oraisa batel gita. That really min haTorah, the get is batel. I go to Bezdin in front of three dayanim and I say, I hereby cancel the get. Min de oraisa, the get is batel. Umishum makoach Bezdin yofeh. Sharinan Eshes Ishla Alma. How is it that Rabban Gamliel Azakin is actually taking effect here? The Torah allows for this to happen, for a husband to cancel a get after the shliach departs. Rabban Gamliel says it doesn't work anymore. The Gemara says a powerful answer. A lot of Rishonim here. Yes, Rabban Gamliel Azakin is more powerful in this case than the din de oraisa. Why? Because we're sitting at a chuppah. Kol de mekadesh adaita de rabbanan mekadesh. Anyone who gets married, they always get married according to the din de rabbanan shabo. And therefore, because the chachamim, that's what the chassan just said now. Hareat mikudesh asli b'dabazu kidas Moshe v'Yisrael. The way Moshe ordained things to be, the way that he wanted it to be, not according to some husband who's breaking the rules. If the husband is not kidas Moshe v'Yisrael, his will and desires is zero. It's a flat line, and therefore, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Keep saying that Rabban Gamliel Azakin is able to win, and all of his desires are null and void. Very powerful piece of Gemara, and a lot of Rishonim here to explain some of the deeper mechanics of how this works. 10 lines from the bottom. Let's keep going. Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph. Amar le Ravina le Rav Ashi. Teinach, I could understand the Kaddish Bekaspa. We davened already. Teinach the Kaddish Bekaspa. I could understand what you're saying if the marriage that's being uprooted is a marriage of money, where he gives her a ring. But says the Gemara, Kaddish bebia ma'ikal lemeimar. We know from the first mission on Kedushin that a couple is allowed to marry with bia. They can have intercourse, and that counts. Be'edus, that counts. So if that's the case, they already had Tash B'Shamita. You're going to uproot the Tash B'Shamita to marry them? Says the Gemara, yes. Shavua Rabbanon leBeilaso Beilas Znus. We retroactively undo what they did. It's a Maisa Bia that says that they're married. Come the Chachamim and say, you didn't follow Das Moshe B'Yisrael. I don't care that you got married with Tash B'Shamita. Too bad she is now no longer a Besula. She's a Be'ula. And Halacha L'Maisa, they are not married. So Kedas Moshe B'Yisrael, it's a very powerful tool. We halachically assume that when a person gets married, they're following all of the rabbinic guidelines that are standard fare for all of our chuppahs and all of our weddings that we have now. And if a guy says, I want to marry you, but I don't want to give you a ksuba, you're not married. You're breaking all the rules. It doesn't work. Same exact thing is true here, even if it was that they had Tash Mishamita to marry. All right, let's continue. 5-6 lines from the bottom. Tanu Rabbanan. Omar le'asara. A man says to 10 men, Kosvu get le'ishti. He says to 10 men, I want you to please write a get for my wife. So what do we do in regards to the fact that he may then want to cancel the get? So I say to a room of 10 men, I would like you to please cancel the get that I just sent out. Rebbe says, I can tell 3 guys that the get is batel. The other 7 guys, I can say nothing, no problem. Rashbag omer eino yachal levatel ela ze bifnei ze. But Rashbag says, all 10 of them need to know. One room, all people, same time. I just want to let you know I'm canceling the get. What is this machlokas between Rebbe, who allows us to be mavatel only with some of the people, and Rashbag, who says with all people? Says the Gemara, the machlokas is 2 lines from the bottom. Be'edus shebatla miktsasa batla kula kamiflage. We're discussing whether or not bittul can happen if I only let some of the people in the room know about it. Last line. Rebbe Safar, according to Rebbe, he says edus shebatla miktsasa. If I'm mevatel with only 3 of the 10 people, lo batla kula. Not everything is done. I'm only removing those 3. The other 7 can still bring about the get. The azle hanach, if one of the 7 go, kasve v'yave lichtavu v'lisvu, no problem. She's still halachically divorced. No problem at all. That works out great. But according to Rashbag on the 2nd line of Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis, Savar, he holds edus shebat lemikzasa bat lakula. No, if you're mevatel with the 3, then the 7 can't do anything anymore. The hanach, the remaining 7 who never heard about the bittul, lo yade ve'azle v'kasa v'yave v'sharu ishes ishla alma. Really, the get is a 0, and what we're saying is that she's going to go marry someone based on those 7. Those 7 are not allowed to do that. There's another way to possibly understand this machlokas. The kule alma edus shebat lemiktsasa lo bat lakula. Maybe there's no machlokas about this nakuda. Maybe everyone agrees that when there is a partial edus, that it's not a full bittul. The hacha hainu taima de Rashbag. Maybe Rashbag holds something different. Not about edus shebat lakula bat lemiktsasa, but kasavar milsa de misavda be'ape asara. An unrelated din, that when we have 10 people, we can only undo with 10 people. We're just going to pause for a second to say Kedusha. So then, based on this, what would happen if it wasn't just Stam that he asked 10 people to write a get? Let's say it was Kulchem that he needed each of them to actually be the signatories, all 10 of them. The Gemara says, 10 lines down, Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. If the case was Kulchem, where everyone had to sign, Mahu, what then would we say about Rab Shimon ben Gamliel? Do we say Taimader Rab Shimon ben Gamliel is Mishum Tekasavar Edus Shabbat Lemiktsasa Bat Lakula? Is it that he says, if I only let 3 of the 10 know that I'm not going forward with this get, I want to cancel it, the other 7 Batla Kulo, the other 7 are also Batel. Vehani Kevan to Amar Lahu Kulchem Lo Matzu Ksivi Viabe, because not all 10 in the room, everyone knows that you won't be able to write this get. O Dilma, or perhaps maybe it's a little different. Time of the Rashbag, Mishum de Kasavar, Kol Milsa de Misabda Bape Beasara. Or perhaps it's the second possibility. That was the Iba Yisema that we saw a few lines ago. That maybe Rashbag holds a separate, unrelated rule that whenever we engage 10 people around the get, we need those same 10 people in the room to dissolve the get. And therefore, afilu kulchem nami, no matter what, the halacha would be that this would not be valid. So Tashma, let's see if we can find an answer a third of the way down, beginning of the line. Let's say, Amar Lishnaim, this is a Tosefta here in this Masechta. Amar Lishnaim, if a man says to two people, Tnu get le'ishti, a man says to Reuven and Shimon, I want you to write a get to my wife. Yachol levatel zeh shelo bifnei zeh divrei Rebbe. Rebbe's of the opinion I can cancel with Reuven and say nothing to Shimon. And Rashbag Omer, no, eino yachol levatel ela zeh bifnei zeh. I can only cancel if both people are present. The Ha says the Gemara, Shnayim is the chikulchem dami. This is very similar to the din of kulchem. I asked the two of you. It's the same thing as asking the 10 of you. And what do we see? Upligi. We see that Rashbag is still arguing, which implies that the reason why Rav Shimon ben Gamliel was makbid in the other case wasn't because of the reason that whenever we ask 10 to write, we need 10 to be there to cancel, but rather because of this din that the Gemara says of kulchem. So Amar Rav Ashi, that's not a good argument because if we were talking about Edim to do the writing, to witness the writing, Hachanami, I agree. But Hacha b'maya skin, and perhaps our Tosefta is talking about something different. Perhaps it's talking about Be'edei Holacha. It's only talking about people who are transferring the get. They're just the shlichim. And Hachanami Mistabra to argue that the Tosefta is talking about this to Katani Sefer because it says later in the Tosefta, Omar lezebi fnei atzmo velezebi fnei atzmo yachol levatel zeh shelo bifnei zeh. We see that bittul is allowed. Now, Iyamr's bishama be'etei holacha shapir. If I ask one of you to bring the get, to carry it, and another one of you to be the shliach, that's fine. But Ela Iyamr's be'etei ksiva mimit starfe. If I ask two people to sign a get separately, that does not work. I need you both in the same room. Where do we see this from? Because Omar Mar ein edusan mitztarefes at shiur shneim ke'echad. So maybe that means that we're talking about Eidei Holacha and not the other kind of Eidim. To this, the Gemara responds, not Lav Dafka. Dilma Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha Svirale. Maybe this Tosefta follows the sheet of Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha. And Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha is of the opinion that that even Eidei Ksiva could be written, could be asked separately, and that would be fine. Okay, the Gemara then transitions to understand these two different machlokos that we saw between Rebbe and Rashbag. We saw the first machlokas of Rebbe and Rashbag. If a man broke the rules and said, "I want to be mavatel the get," but it was after Rabban Gamliel HaZaken's institution that you should not. And the second machlokas we saw was a little bit lower in regards to whether or not, if a man says to 10, do we say we can be batel b'miktsas or not batel b'miktsas? So the Gemara says 2/3 of the way down on Lamed Gimel Amud Beis, the Gemara says, Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Shamis minei de Rav Abba Tarte. I heard two things, Chada Kerebi, v'Chada Kerashbag. I know that in one of these machlokos we hold like Rebbe, in the other one we hold like Rashbag, but v'lo yodana hai Kerebi v'hai Kerashbag. But I don't know which one is which. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yosef, Nechse Anan. Let's take a look. The Gemara says, Techi Asa Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, Amar, Maise, there was a story that took place. The Asa Rebbe Kedibri Chachamim. Rebbe followed the sheet of the Chachamim in that particular case. And the Gemara says, Rav Parta Benosha Rabbi Elazar ben Parta, Ben Benosha Rav Parta Hagadol, he says, Imkain Ma Koach Bezdin Yafeh. Rebbe in that particular case had gone against a din derabanan, which was the category of makoach yafa bezdin, and the Gemara says v'chaza Rebbe v'asa k'Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. We see that Rebbe was contrite; he changed his opinion and he agreed to Rashbag to makoach bezdin yafa. So what that means is that umidahakir Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, in regards to the machlokas that we saw about bitlu, where a man goes into bezdin after Rabban Gamliel put in the takana and says, "I hereby want to undo my get," Rebbe agrees with Rashbag. He changed his opinion. So in the other case where he says to 10 people that he wants to do the get, therefore hach ki Rebbe, that one must be like Rebbe that we allow for miktsas bittul. Says the Gemara, ve'af Rabbi Yoshaya demin usha savar chada ki Rebbe v'chada ki Rashbag. We saw the same exact thing with Rabbi Yoshia, that one held like Rebbe and one held like Rashbag. Where do we see this? We're about 12 lines from the bottom. Dama Rabbi Bar Barchana, Chamisha Save, Havinan Kameh Rav Yoshia demin usha. There were 5 elders sitting in front of Rav Yoshia in the city of Usha. Asahu Gaver, this guy shows up, Kameh, in front of him. The Ashkele Gita al Korche. He forces everyone to write a get. He says, I need you guys to write a get. Omar Lan, he says to them, Zilu itmuru v'kisvula. Go hide and write the get. Why did they have to go hide? The Isal Kadaitach Kirebi, that we're allowed to do partial bittul. Who cares if you hide? Kimit mirei my have. It doesn't matter. Elashmami, no, it must be kirashbag svirale, that they must have held like Rashbag in regards to the case of bittul. And v'isal kadaitach idach nami kiraban Shimon ben Gamliel. And if you want to say that the case of Mivatlo, where the guy went into Bezdin when he shouldn't have, after the takana Rabban Gamliel Azakin and said, hey, I want to divorce my wife, lama lehu atmure, live deru ivdure. They shouldn't have to separate it all. Elashma mina chada kirebi v'chada kireb Shimon ben Gamliel. This approach is the reversed. But either way, one of the sources where we saw machlokas Rebbe and Rashbag is like Rebbe, the other one is like Rashbag. But Virava takes a totally different approach to these two machlokos. Virava Amar Rav Nachman was his Rebbe, 3rd century Amora. Rava was 4th. Rava says in the name of one of his Rabbeim, Halacha ki Rebbe b'shtehen. We're a big maker. This is a huge nafkamina. That means that according to Rebbe, even after the takana of Rabban Gamliel that you're not allowed to do this, if a husband is mevatel, the get is still batel. The less leila Rav Nachman makoach bezdin yafeh. How can you say that? How can we say that Rav Nachman doesn't hold of the principle of makoach bezdin yafeh? After all, last line of Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis, we'll be stopping in just a few lines. The Gemara says, "Va'amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel." In a case of Yisomin, top of Lamed Daled Lamed Aleph, in a case of Yisomin Shabo Lachlok Benichse Avihen, when we have Yisomin, Rashi highlights this is a case of Yisomin who are Ketanim. This becomes evident in the Gemara later, but not evident now. Shabo Lachlok Benichse Avihen, the father died, left over little kids. So what did the Bezdin do to support these kids? The Gemara says, Ma'amidin lohen aputropos. We get them people who are going to take care of them. Uborin lehem d'chelek yafeh. And each of the mediators, each of these representatives, pick a good piece of property for the children. Higdilu, when they get older, yecholin limchos. That's one shita. For Rav Nachman, didei, Rav Nachman himself held Omar, higdilu, ein yecholin limchos. Tehim kain, makoach bezdin yafeh. See black on white that Rav Nachman does hold of makoach bezdin yafeh, that when the chachamim come to override a din deoraisa, which I know sounds heretical, they're not overriding a din deoraisa, but they're putting in a stopgap measure to protect Klal Yisrael. So there we see that Rav Nachman was soser himself. How could it be that Rava on the bottom of Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis quoted Rav Nachman to say we hold like Rebbe when Rebbe doesn't hold a makoach bezdin yafeh? Here in the case of the Yisomin Ketan, and we do hold like this. So therefore, the Gemara says Hasam Mamona Hacha Isura. In the case of Mamon, there he holds a makoach bezdin yafeh. But when it comes to Isurin, he doesn't. When it comes to Isurin, he holds makoach bezdin yafeh. We'll stop right here. Wishing you all a beautiful night. Mazel tov to Hirsch and Vaina on the wedding.